Howdy, all. It was a weekend with the Olympics ending and with a notable musical event. And let me start with the musical event first because I have to say, and I'm not going to name the place in Buffalo, but there was a venue in Buffalo that decided they wanted to sort of cash in on the Tragically Hip concert, the final Tragically Hip show in Kingston, Ontario, that was being broadcast on CBC. And this business in Buffalo decided they were going to put up big screens, sell tickets for an outside venue, and have all the hip fans in Buffalo come and enjoy the concert. There's only one problem. The sound system at this place apparently sucked really bad. So it was at the point where the concert started that people who couldn't hear it just lost their what.
Yeah.
And I wasn't there, but I had friends who had bought tickets and they ended up leaving and going back to their place and watching the concert there. Apparently they ran out of beer, and then also the venue that they were at, they have a noise curfew of 11 o'clock. Well, the show went over 11.
Mm-hmm.
So when the most emotional moment of this event happened, of the concert, where Gord Downey understandably breaks down because he knows it's the last show he may, probably the last show he's ever going to do in a long and storied musical career. They shut the sound off. I don't even know if they shut the video off. They shut the sound off, and apparently this venue decided to refund the tickets. But that's not the point. The point was that people wanted to be together and watch this event, and they really, I think, screwed them over. But Russ, I saw on Twitter last night. Canada is a country, I think it's 35 million people. 11 million people watched this concert on Saturday.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's nice. I mean, look, I'm not a big fan. I did see them do a halftime show at the Grey Cup when I covered the Grey Cup, and that was my first real introduction to them other than 50 Mission Cap. Somebody had passed it along to me, and I thought it was cool. And so I had a respect for them. I thought for a live performance to it, like a Super Bowl-ish type of event, they were really good. And I was like, wow, this was actually better than a lot of the talent the NFL gets. So I thought they were really good, and I felt bad for the whole situation. I could understand why there were a lot of tears. So it's a cool thing.
Anthony, I don't know if are you into the hip, or do you know a lot about them, or?
Fairly limited. I don't want to. I'm not difficult for me to speak to it. I know there was an interesting post from somebody also on Twitter, and I think it was Ann Fraser, I think, stated, you follow, how much your Twitter is filled up with hockey and covers mostly hockey, when 90% of your tweets that night were basically tragically hip tweets.
Yeah, and
that to me, again, I heard a few of their songs back in the 90s and things of that sort. Sort of, again, being an American didn't quite register as much to me. You do get that feeling, though, because of the outpouring of how people felt about it, that, you always get that feeling that if you weren't into them, I said, so what is it that I'm missing?
Right.
And again, maybe it's just the fact, again, that I know they had a couple late night shows that they were on, and
Saturday Night Live they were on.
Saturday Night Live, and again, I don't remember in terms of seeing them, but it didn't register. Apparently, again, it didn't register with the American audience, so it wasn't pushed as hard down here.
Yeah.
We have, of course, a lot of our own bands, obviously, down here during that era and during the 90s and everything. But I certainly respect the outpouring of everyone up in Canada who watched it. I got that weird feeling like, damn, I missed out on something. There's something. There has to be something that I'm missing here. And I'm probably going to go back and probably listen a little bit to it and see if I can kind of get that connection a little bit as to why people know.
I'll give you a list of songs to listen to because I've been a fan of the Hip since their first album, and really since seen them in concert since the early to mid 90s. And I have to tell this because I wrote an article about them on Saturday. It was essentially they played in Buffalo, and then ended up being the last time I saw them live last February, not February of 16, but February of 15. And they did a tour where They did an entire album, or the entire album from beginning to end, and it was the album that 50 Mission Cap, the song that Russ was talking about, which is a song about Bill Barilko, the player who scored the game-winning goal for the Maple Leafs in '51, and how he got killed in a plane crash in the summer of '51, and they didn't win a Stanley Cup until 1962 when they found the crash site and found his body. So it was, just an excellent song, but they never played that song for all the times that I saw them in Buffalo. I saw them a few times in Toronto, but they never played that song in Buffalo. And obviously, because they're a bunch of Sabre fans, and they would boo when they say the line, the Leafs win the Cup, obviously. But because they were playing the full album, they had to play that song. And, of course, when it came up, the Sabres, the Buffalonians, the Sabre fans booed when they said the Leafs won the Cup. It was typical. But I didn't care. I was there. It was the first time they said there. Me and a few other people who were from Toronto in the section were vocally, responding. But I'm glad that was the last time that I saw them because it was a notable event. The first time I did try to see them, and this will be the last thing, they played a small venue in Buffalo in 1996. It was it was a small club called the Showplace Theater. They would do this every once in a while in Toronto as well. But there was this was basically like a basement bar type of thing with about 500 people. It was a radio promo, and the radio station had basically said, "Okay, we're giving away tickets for this show." And the place that I lived at was literally 3 blocks away from the Showplace Theater. So I threw on some clothes, ran out the door, got in line, and as typical of my luck...
Is that the same shirt that you're wearing now?
Yeah, there you go. As typical of my luck, I was number 502. I missed out by 2 tickets. And you didn't want to see me at that point because I was livid. Now, luckily, I saw them later that year, but still, that memory.
That would have been seeing in that venue would have been something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen bands that I like in small venues, but anyway. Yeah. It was an emotional, and I will freely admit, when Gord Downie was crying at the end of that concert, I was crying. Because
you cried, Mike. Come on.
Yeah, I cried. I'm proud to say that I cried because honestly, it's such a there are some people in this world who deserve the fate that he's getting, and he does not. All Gord Downie has ever done is bring joy to people, and people like that don't deserve that, and there are other people who are jerks in this world who do deserve that. So, but anyway, Russ, and we'll start the show after this. Honestly, the Olympics, the only thing I can say good about it is it was 2 weeks that passes, that now we're 2 weeks closer to hockey season.
Yeah, I enjoyed the tennis. I did. I enjoyed the track and field. I love Usain Bolt. I watched a little bit of Phelps. For some reason, swimming has sort of left me as a sport that I love to watch. I don't know why. I'm old enough, I watched Mark Spitz win all those medals, and yet somehow now I don't have the same feeling about it. But I get what you're saying. I didn't watch the opening ceremonies. I didn't watch the closing ceremonies. To me, it's like watching the Super Bowl halftime show. It's sort of boring to me in a big sort of way. The best headline I can give you is Ryan Lochte lost his Speedo because now Speedo has dropped him as a sponsor, and I think that's where it's at for me with the Olympics. For all the good, there was that idiot lying and making us look bad as Americans. So,
Anthony, I didn't watch 1 minute of the basketball team,
men
or women.
I did watch a couple of minutes of that, but not much.
I didn't even know when the games were. I didn't watch it. But
5 minutes in because it was at night, flicking through channels, and my son said, "Oh, Dad, you want to watch basketball?" Sure. It was one of the preliminary games. U.S. was up by 20-some points, and Alex is like, "It's good, right, Dad?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I like a little more of a competitive game if I'm going to be watching basketball, Alex." So I saw that. My son's also involved in swimming now, a little more competitively. He's going to be turning 11 soon. And so he was obviously very interested in watching Michael Phelps. The swimming coach was like, oh, you want to make sure to watch Phelps? So he was watching him, and that was probably the thing we watched the most because there was a built-in interest for Alex for that. Didn't watch the opening ceremonies, didn't watch the closing ceremonies. I almost look at those things as like, you got to be in the stadium to really appreciate it. More than anything, you got to be there at the, and then you're going, wow, this is amazing. Watching it on television, it's there's something that gets lost in that. So for me, we watched here and there, but I wouldn't say this was like a hardcore thing. We were watching it like incessantly, every little thing, because number one, it's just too big of an event. But here and there, more or less, and certainly.
I can honestly say the only thing I can remember from any of the last 5 or 6 opening ceremonies was Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean, at the London Olympics. I think he was playing a piano, doing something that was pretty funny. But other than that,
I would say this: the one thing that struck me, because I watched a little bit of the women's basketball and a little bit of the men's. Why is it that the women's team plays more like a team, right? And they're just dominant. Like there's just no beating them. Nobody got close. I watched a couple times for a couple minutes. Games were over quickly. But yet with the men, they sort of keep the other teams in it. They don't play like a team. That's the part that just makes me not want to watch, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's ego. It's
ego. You fall back on athleticism in a lot of cases and what you're used to doing. It's tough, I think, in that circumstance because you're used to being in a different role. The ego, as Mike's about to say, is a key part of that because, again, you're used to being the guy on the team that you're on, and you have to sort of psychologically put yourself in a different role, and I think a lot of those guys it's difficult to do, but they were able to pull it off.
I think the easiest 3 gold medals ever won were Mike Krzyzewski with the U.S. Olympic men's basketball team. Because
can he smile once? Like we're watching him here, and we were like, and it's almost like, are you enjoying this? And actually,
they never enjoy it. You know that.
He probably. It's an amazing thing though, because I was trying to explain to people watching a little bit of that yes, he's a college coach, but he's coaching the pros in the Olympics. Like, it is a weird dynamic there.
He probably has dysentery from the bad water in Rio. So, okay, let's start the show. Anthony, you go first after I do the intro.
Sure.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, August 22nd, 2016.
Hi, Hockey World. This is Anthony Mingioni, senior writer at Center Ice Magazine.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the VC saga is over. We found out late Friday afternoon after there were a few indications that it would last into the weekend, and to the jubilation of Susan Sarandon, Noah Syndergaard, Boomer Esiason, and many other fans.
And reportedly Liam Neeson.
And Liam Neeson, we have to give him credit for redoing the Taken speech for the video in attracting Jimmy Vesey to sign with the Broadway Blue Shirts, the New York Rangers, on a 2-year entry-level deal. Russ, can you hold back the excitement?
No, I mean, look, it's a cool thing. I hate the vitriol that fans have now for Vesey acting like he hyped himself. He didn't hype himself. He basically went through the system the way anybody else would go through the system, the way anybody else would go on prospective job hunt. Like, it's just bigger because it's in the summer, there's not much going on, and it's the NHL. Other than that, he didn't hype himself. He didn't hype himself in college, but yet I was amazed at all the experts that had watched him all along the way in Harvard that could also now say, oh, he's not going to be any good, or he better be good. Or it's like, listen, teams don't just jump through hoops for somebody that they don't believe can play in the league. I believe he can play in the league. I don't think he's a superstar, but I think he's going to be an excellent player. I think he'll even be better than someone like Justin Schultz. I mean, if you make it to that level, you're pretty good. And the fact is, he just did what anybody else in his position would do, and yet even writers like Mike Harrington from the Buffalo News, it was a disgrace. It was embarrassing. It was when you attack a guy for his intellect after he goes to Harvard, like, that's really bad, because I know a little bit about BC, and I got to know a little bit more about him through other people, and he's a really bright kid. Like, he's been smart all along the way. He wanted a college degree, And just because he didn't want to go to the Sabres, this guy decides to write a column in a national newspaper and kill him. I hated that, and let's just give this kid a chance. The funny thing is, too, I don't think there's going to be a lot of hype in New York. They had a conference call over the phone. They didn't have a big press conference. They still have some guys named like Lundqvist and Nash and Stepan and McDonough. So there's not going to be a huge focus on him in camp either. So for people that think that it's going to be overhyped for him in New York, I don't think so.
Anthony, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think probably by about Thursday of last week, I think I stated that I was just about VC'd out at that point. That said, he had every right to go through the process as he did. Buffalo took a calculated risk. They had multiple they had multiple picks in the next draft that they were willing to risk to get the exclusive signing period, which is one of the reasons why I didn't understand, as Russ stated, why Mike Harrington. And again, it's not making a personal attack against Harrington, but I didn't understand the gist of his column unless he's looking to incite Sabre fans and get them all ticked off for the next time that the Rangers play the Sabres. Talking about Joel Quenneville, not cool that you were watching VC Summer League games. That's scouting. He's not under contract with the Sabres. He might be quote unquote property, but in terms of him being, the Sabres being out of or the Blackhawks or anybody else watching him and being out of line, I thought was an utterly ridiculous point. He's not under contract. Teams also, if they're looking to trade somebody, scouts are there all the time. Scouts are watching all kinds of players. They could be, and you could say maybe that's not what Chicago was doing. That we know they were looking at VC. Maybe they were looking at somebody else. You don't know, but it's casting aspersions, and I was not happy with that. I thought Harrington was out of line with that, or at least the information of that. Beyond that, my expectation, much like you, Mike, I thought for a while that it was going to be the Maple Leafs. I thought he was going to land there. When I heard it got down to Chicago and New York, in my view there, I started to lean a little more towards New York in this circumstance. And lo and behold, that's where he had the opportunity. He's friends with Kevin Hayes. Scott Gorton's got a lot of background, obviously, with the collegiate ranks. So it's close enough, obviously, to Boston, at least for the start of his NHL career. I think he's going to be a solid player in the NHL. I think his play will translate. Will he score at the clip he did at Harvard? Probably not, but I'd still think he's a guy in his first year who can bank in 15 goals if he gets prime ice time, 15, 20 goals, and around 40 points in his first season with the Rangers.
Well, the thing that sort of took me aback about this. I mean, first, from the Buffalo perspective, I'm not going to comment on Harrington's article because I think it speaks for itself. But the Buffalo fans, and I know that the Buffalo radio station, which is the one that carries the Sabres, banged away for almost 2 months. He's good friends with Jack Eichel. He's best buddies with Jack Eichel. That's the reason. And I'm like, okay, that is meaningless. I mean, I think the Kevin Hayes thing is part of why he went to the Rangers, but I think it's also the close proximity of New York to Boston. I think, there's a number of factors. And the thing is, a lot of the criticism that came out against VC after the signing was, you chose the wrong team. The Rangers are on the pathway down. It's not a team that's on the way up. Well, maybe that's not important to Jimmy Vesey. I mean, maybe what's important to him is, okay, maybe he's a third-line guy with the Rangers this year. But when Rick Nash either gets traded or claimed in the expansion draft or gets bought out or even 2 years down the line and when his contract expires, Jimmy Vesey moves up into the top 6.
Yeah. And
he's going to be part of that organization. It's not going to be a year or two and then he's a UFA. He's going to be part of any organization he signs with for 5-6 years until he becomes a UFA.
So there were a couple things, too, Mike. If you remember, a couple days ago when I wasn't sure how much of a player the Rangers were, and then I had just seen before I went on the show on Twitter that Alain Vigneault was at the meeting, I'm like, okay, anytime you get a coach that goes to the meeting, A, the team is serious, and B, a player likes that, right? That's important to the player because then he can literally ask the coach whatever he wants. So then I knew the Rangers were certainly in it to win it. I didn't know if they'd still get him because I still didn't think they were the top choice. But again, I got where the kid was coming from. And also, I think it's important to note no matter how many people went on Twitter, celebrities and otherwise, VC saw none of it. He didn't pay any attention to it. So for all these people that were thinking, oh, that's going to make a big difference because my favorite actor says he should become a Ranger because they like the Rangers, had no impact.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing for Susan Sarandon to say welcome, but if it was like Margot Robbie or something like that, I'm sure Jimmy Vesey would have gotten wind of that. But the thing is that, I mean, I think he's, and not just Mike Harrington, but a number of writers have said, well, you know what, he better be good, because to go through all this, all this stuff, this 2-month long process, and then him not being good, I mean, then the whole thing was not justified. And I'm like, okay, this is his right. He played 4 years in college. He can go UFA if he wants to. He did, and he can choose where he wants to go. Like Russ said, the hype was not him. I don't think it was his agents. I think it was the teams that were anxious to get his services. I know Toronto really wanted him.
And also, let's call it what it is, the media as well, because, again, we're so starched for any kind of hockey news at this point.
Two things that I'm sick of.
That's also fed into it. We all feed into it.
Yeah. Two things that I'm sick of, too, and, Brian Burke saying this is only a pimple on the elephants. You know what? Fine. Whatever, Brian. If you want to come out with a soundbite, I like Brian Burke. But the idea is to sort of then analyze who's done well from college that's ever done this. It doesn't matter, because this guy is this guy. You can't just rely on, hey, guys who won the Hobie Baker haven't done anything. It's like the other day when I heard people bashing the ECAC, I'm like, yeah, so I guess Ken Dryden and Joe Nieuwendyk and a lot of other guys, those guys don't count because, they were freaks, right? And then, Jonathan Taves played in NCAA, but again, that doesn't count because he's with the Blackhawks now, and we don't want to remember that. And a lot of other players, a lot. And it's just every year players come through. Ryan McDonough played at Wisconsin. I mean, come on, there's a ton of players. And so when I see that nonsense, it is just that. It's like, all right, guys, just stop, because now all you're really doing is perpetuating something that's not true. And again, even if it were true, you still have to give the next guy the benefit of the doubt, because he might be the guy.
Well, some minor breaking news here, and I sort of predicted this was going to happen after the Leafs did not have to use a pro contract on Jimmy Vesey. I think they were holding back on the fact that because they have 47 pro contracts, and if they signed Vesey, that would have meant 48, and that's getting pretty close to the 50 contract limit. The Leafs have signed free agent goaltender Jonas Enroth to a 1-year contract. There's their backup. That was rumored. That was reported from a Swedish website, Expressen, earlier this month. And it made a whole bunch of sense because Enroth is a really good backup. He's had stints with the Sabres, Dallas, and Los Angeles. And, he played pretty well for the Kings last year, but only played, I think, like 15 or 16 games.
And the commissioner for my fantasy league better wake up, because I put an offer in on him 2 weeks ago. And this is why. So he better wake up. He should be a part of my team. I'm just saying.
Well, and Anthony, going completely 180 degrees after last year with Reimer up and down, with Bernier going to the AHL, with Garrett Sparks being thrown into the situation, and basically I think thrown to the Wolves in the last part of the year. The Leafs go out and trade a first and a second round pick to get Frederik Andersen. And this is a team in transition, but now when you have Andersen and Enroth as your goaltending tandem, I think that's solidified pretty decently.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, Enroth's a solid NHL backup. It fits in really well. I think fits in well with what Toronto's trying to do going forward. Andersen is well established. I think he knows going in that what kind of role. I think the two of them can probably work pretty well together in this case. And again, I don't think there's as much of a threat to Andersen certainly coming in here with Enroth signing.
Yeah, I like it, and it's a way for Enroth to sort of get back in the league.
Yeah, and that he can handle the the Atlantic Division as a longtime member of the Sabres. So I mean, I think it's a good signing, and $750,000 for the amount for that contract. Actually, I'm going to call an audible here for a second, because one of the things that, and this is how the world of media and hockey has changed. And you wouldn't expect the Leafs, and they're not the first team to do this, but everybody thought like Lou Lamoriello was sort of like this, sort of archaic, traditional GM. The last 3 or 4 signings that the Maple Leafs have made, in their press releases, they have released the salary. It's the world of Cap Geek and now General Manager that they're providing that information. Now, there's been other situations this summer where information about certain contractual situations was not revealed, but they're starting. Even the Leafs, who have this conservative reputation, and Lamoriello as a traditional GM, even they are starting to give that information out. Russ, I think that's a good thing, because I think that's information that everybody wants to know.
No, it is a good thing. We still see some other teams that don't do it. I think it would be nicer if more teams did it, because at some point you can go to the NHLPA site and get at least their this year's salary no matter what. So it's not a big secret, but it's just something that isn't always made at the time, and fans want to know. Like, why not tell them? It's not like the player's ashamed of it. Actually, Jonas Enroth got a lot less than what I offered him in my league. He's going to make $2.2 million on my team. So it just shows you,
I'm not hiring you now.
You should defect to your league then. You should go to your league. But Anthony, I mean, teams. I think Nashville was one of the first teams that revealed that kind of information, and I think in the world where you see general manager and Capke before the founder of Capke passed away, the traffic that goes to those websites, you cannot deny that there's an interest there in that kind of information, in contract links and clauses and things of that nature. So I think it's a good thing that another NHL team in Toronto is getting on board and providing that info.
It's a good step forward. If one of the, like I said, one of the more established franchises in terms of history in the NHL, like the Leafs, are willing to give out that information now in their press releases, I think it's a good step forward. I do think it's still going to remain for a lot of teams in the NHL to be sort of their auspices as to whether or not they're going to do it. I know, the team Russ and I cover, the Philadelphia Flyers. They do not release salary information. I guess they're under this. What's that?
Rangers don't either.
Rangers don't either. So again, it's still gonna pretty much remain the judgment call. And they're figuring if you're if you're a reporter, you're gonna find out anyway. It's our business. It's the flow of information, how much information a team wants to give you in this circumstance. And again, it depends on the judgment of each franchise as to who's going to do what. I'd love to see the Flyers or the Rangers be able to release their salary information, but again, it's their choice, and I know, based on the way Ron Hextall likes to operate in terms of the flow of information that comes out, he's pretty tight when it comes to information flowing out, and I certainly, under his auspices, I don't see the Flyers, budging off of that. If they did, I'd be honestly surprised.
Well, I see, at this point, I'm wondering, why teams are being so conservative. I mean, what is the point?
Just what they're used to until they're told otherwise. Some just don't want to change. I mean, it's just as simple as that. Why give it to you if they don't want? Like, this field.
It's any flow of information. It's any flow of information they feel that another team can use. But again, they're going to find out anyway. The point is that Mike is saying, and Russ, is that reporters are going to find out anyway. The money is going to be out there. So, why not? But
again, I mean, eventually, general manager is going to get the information from either the agent or from the player themselves. I mean, it's going to be out there eventually. So I mean, I don't understand the motivation of the team not to say, okay, we signed this guy to this contract, and I mean, we're proud of it, or not. If you don't reveal it, you're not proud of it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? There's sort of like, what are the reasons why you won't reveal it? Just provide the information that's necessary.
So I do have some mild breaking news, and I'll stress that it's mild.
Okay.
So I just got an email. So Team North America announced their training camp schedule for the World Cup. So I figured, and of course everything's subject to date and time change. But on September 5th, they're going to start their first practice. It looks like they're practicing at the Bell Center. So the 5th, 6th, and 7th at the Bell Center, like 11 to 12:45. Then they have a game day skate on the 11th, and then on the 11th, game day skates at 9:30. Then on 6 o'clock, they're playing Team Europe, and then they go to Pittsburgh. They're gonna practice at the Lemieux Sports Complex on the 13th, and then play on the 14th. I might head out there for that, because by that point, if I'm not covering some junior hockey, I'll be so starved for hockey that I think it'll be a nice thing to do. So I figured I'd give people, let them know they can get a jump on it. Team North America, I think, is going to have a lot of interest, so there you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's the team that I'm going to be following the most, Russ. I mean, obviously, because Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel. I mean, all the young guns, the young players, the future of the league are on that team, and I don't know. I mean, I'm reserving judgment about the World Cup. We're going to talk about the World Cup a lot when it gets closer to it, but
Yep.
I brought this up when Kevin Allen was on the show on Friday, and of course he wasn't surprised at my skepticism. But the fact that I'm waiting to see what the reaction of the fans are to this tournament, because I mean, we know what the reaction was towards the Olympics, and there's sort of a buy-in in terms of national pride when it comes to the Olympics. But in this instance, not that it's contrived, but it's just there's not the tradition there that the Olympics has,
Right.
And I'm just wondering whether games in the middle of September in Toronto in a non-Olympic setting is something that fans will buy.
I think what it is that they're starting flat-footed. They're not able to draw upon previous success. The older ones were their own thing. Like, there's a lot of people that are just sort of looking at this like it's a new tournament. And because of that, it's going to take some things to sort of get it going. And so, like, even if I look on Twitter, I see, like, hey, Mikko Koivu was named the captain for Finland. I don't see a lot of fan tweets about it yet. Like, hey, I'm excited. I'm going to go to that game on the 13th or the 14th. I don't see a lot of that just yet. And so, we'll see. We'll see what happens with this, because it could still be a big hit. It really might take until the last minute. It really might, because right now there are some people that are not in hockey mode.
Now, Russ, you were mentioning before the show something about Derek Pouliot and an article that.
Yeah. So I wrote something on Sportsology, but I'll give the gist of it here. So I interviewed him back when it was media day for the Stanley Cup, and even though he wasn't playing regularly and didn't play at all in the Stanley Cup, I chatted with him because there was a good parallel between him and Justin Abdelkader in 2008, 2009. I covered that Stanley Cup, and he was a black ace for the Red Wings. And, Justin Abdelkader, no one was saying at that point, is he a bust? Why isn't he playing? Is he just not good enough? And all these other things. And yet Justin Abdelkader today is a pretty good player, and he was 22 back then. Well, right now Derek Pouliot's 22, and I just said it's unfair for people to hang this, well, you were 8th overall, and because Olimata was picked after you and made it quicker, that you're now a failure. He's not a failure. Matter of fact, he's played 50-something games in the NHL. He's going to have a shot to make the team now. The team's changed their philosophy on how they play, which does play into his strengths. He's now 208 pounds. Like, there's a lot of things looking his way, and this is a big year for him, even at the age of 22, because, again, it does sometimes take till 25. Sometimes people don't want to hear that for a defenseman, but the idea is he's in position. The Penguins, right now, this group with the Penguins have done the right thing with him, because I think he was rushed a little bit initially, and it was a little overhyped when you remember where they had the video of the tournament, the summer tournament, and they were talking about how he's definitely going to make the team, and then when he didn't, I think fans were a little upset. But I think with the Rutherford group in there, they haven't rushed him, and he's able to was able to build himself up. and now out of camp he'll have a chance to make the team. And I'm just saying people need to look at that and give a chance. You know, you can go to the website, you can look at his quotes. They're very similar to what Abdelkader told me back in 08, 09. But because he wasn't an 8th overall pick, you know, the pressure wasn't on Abdelkader. And I'm not saying the Penguins put pressure on this kid because they don't. But I'm saying fans do.
Anthony, I mean, I seem to think that, and Russ mentioned Mata. I mean, they were in the same draft class, and I think Mata was drafted in the 20s. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing Mata at one of the rookie tournaments in London, Ontario that the Leafs held a few years ago. And I was more impressed with Pouliot than Mata, but Mata made the team. I think it was as a 19-year-old. Mm-hmm. And Pouliot, still at 22, is still finding his way. Now, we know that defense, learning the art of playing defense, it's not an exact science, and it isn't something that, you have one player like Aaron Ekblad who can step in as an 18-year-old and play wonderfully, or Rasmus Ristolainen, and then you have other guys who at 23 or 24 still don't get it, but eventually, Anton Strawman got it in his mid to late 20s. So is it a fair thing for Pouliot to be criticized for being, quote, a bust at 22 years old? And do you think it's because Mata was in the same draft and had early success?
I think you're on to something there, Mike. I do. Everybody, I guess when it comes to defensemen, it's an interesting thing. I find that, there's a certain patience level that has to be involved with the development of any NHL defense, and I think goaltenders have the longest stretch of time. I think for developmental patience, defense should be right behind it, and then forwards, you tend to sometimes see them maybe a little bit quicker coming into the NHL. Again, Mata, I think, was a special case. I think the defensemen who jump into the league so quickly are special cases. I'd also say as well, because that teams are so starved for that puck-moving, two-way defenseman that they so much as a flash of it, they tend to move a lot faster with that. So that's probably the main issue that I would have there, I think, with that kind of a point.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know that I know that Pouliot is going to be an important piece of the Penguins and their blue line, because they did lose one of their defensemen. I think it was Lovejoy to the Devils.
Yep.
So and Anthony had to drop off.
There's a spot for him. I mean, that's it. Plain and simple. There's a spot for him. I can't stress enough, even as a black ace, how important it is to be a part of a team that wins a Stanley Cup, even if you're watching from the press box, because you're practicing with these guys, right. You're hanging around them, you're learning things, you're seeing things, they're talking. It helps. I watched it help a lot of guys on the Detroit Red Wings as an example, and I think it'll help him. And so that's why I just sort of look at that and I shrug off all that stuff. I mean, many times I had to shrug off the Dylan McIlrath stuff too. I mean, different player, different reasons, But again, it's because he's 8th overall and he's 22 that I think people are looking like, wow, he's getting old. And it's like, no, he's really not, because if all of a sudden at 23, 24, even 25 he hits, and he hits pretty big, or at least he becomes like a 30-point guy, 35-point guy and responsible in his own end, he could be there for the next 10, 15 years. Like, where is that in any other field in the world? How is that not successful? And that's where I think it's just a perception thing.
If you're a first-round pick and you at age 22 or 23 find it and you can play in the league for 5, 6, 7 years, I mean, you're an effective player and you have to be considered a success. I mean, I think that with the draft being as important as it is now, and people are looking back at players like Adam Larson being picked 4th, or Zach Bogosian being drafted, I think 3rd or 4th, for Luke Shen being drafted 5th by the Maple Leafs in 2008, I believe, and then them not really turning out and filling out to expectations. I mean, they're not busts; they are NHLers, but when you're taken in the top 5, everybody thinks that you're supposed to be a star.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see more. I think we're going to see more out of Larson. I actually just saw a quote from Connor McDavid today that says, unless you're playing with them and then against them, sometimes it's hard to see all the little things that he does. And that is a fair point because, again, from the outside looking in, a lot of people are saying, well, he's not scoring points, right? He's not getting 45, 50 points. So what is Adam Larson really doing? And McDavid's saying, whoa, I see him doing a lot of stuff. And now, granted, he's his teammate now, so you take it with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. But he did come out and say this. He didn't have to come out and say this. But he did. And it does point out that there are a lot of other things in the game that are important. So let's keep that and, control that a little bit, because I think that's an important fact that when someone like McDavid talks, you should listen to it because he does see things that other people don't. And that's where I say to the fans, just cool it, because I still see there's articles about this trade. I still see Taylor Hall's in the headlines. He's probably tired of being in the headlines in Edmonton. He's in New Jersey now. It's just like, they can't move on from it. It's just move on. The press should move on. The fans should move on. He's no longer there. I'm sure the organization's moved on, right? They're good at that. Organizations, the minute they trade a guy, they've moved on. But it seems like nobody else has moved on from Taylor Hall in that part of the world.
Couple news and notes. It was announced this morning, not to make this Leaf buzz, but Mark Hunter, who was the director of player personnel for the Maple Leafs, was promoted to assistant general manager. It sounds pretty much, Russ, from the press release that it's a bump in title and maybe a bump in pay. I don't know, that they didn't release that kind of info. But he, Lou Lamoriello said in the press release that his responsibilities really haven't changed. He's going to be in charge of pro scouting and amateur scouting and player evaluation. So it just sounds like that, and he was, the funny thing was, before Lamoriello was signed last July, Kyle Dubas and Mark Hunter were splitting the duties after Dave Nonis was fired. So I think this is sort of like they finally got around to naming him assistant general manager, but he was pretty much assistant general manager anyway.
With Lou's approval. I think that's the key. They brought in Lou to oversee the situation and say, hey, we have these two guys. Are they going to be good? Are they going to be able to move up in this league? What can you do with them? Can you help them a little bit? And this is all why Lou was brought in. Because at some point, Lou is going to step down, and they're still going to have these guys. And that's so right now they're being tutored by him to some degree, and they can see how he operates. And there's nothing wrong with learning from Lou Lamoriello. So I think this is all very successful and smart by the Leafs, because even their management is sort of going through stages like the team, from going from worst to getting better to getting better. And so these are all positive things.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and we'll see how it evolves over the next few years, because Lou doesn't seem to even be ready to exit.
No, but I'm just saying down the line.
No, I know, and I'm just saying that. It's set up. Lou is. I was part of the media scrum last month. He doesn't seem tired of the NHL and of hockey. He's enthused by what's going on with the Leafs. He's doing a good job, and I think he probably stays for the foreseeable future. But you have two potential heir apparents here with, Kyle Dubas, who's a young guy who. I think eventually, if it's not with Toronto, it'll be someplace else that he becomes general manager. And Mark Hunter now is a potential general manager. I think in a few years down the road, he's had experience in the OHL with the London Knights. He's been a coach in the AHL back in the day. Now he's an assistant GM at the NHL level. In a few years, if he puts a couple more good drafts in, he may be a candidate that will go to another team or will challenge for the Leafs job once Lamoriello retires. So I think you got two candidates there.
There's time. That's the good thing for the Leafs is there's time here. There's time to see if Hunter's work will pay off. We can't say it's all been 100% successful yet because we just don't know. It looks good. And so right now it's good news for Leaf fans.
Now, the coaches for the All-American Prospect game. Now, last year in Buffalo, the coaches were Phil Housley and Jeremy Roenick. This year, the coaches have a certain Philadelphia connection.
Yep. We've got Mark Howe and John LeClair, which is great. Again, these are two huge names. Obviously, Mark Howe is a Hall of Famer. John LeClair is a U.S. Hockey Hall of Famer. part of the Legion of Doom. I don't think John LeClair is going to teach these guys about what they did on the Legion of Doom. But again, in his own right, 406 goals, 413 assists, really was a heck of a player. And at some point should be up for the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's not a point-a-game guy, but he was a pretty dominant guy. So I think down the line he will certainly be up for that. But right now he hasn't. But, this is cool. Again, I don't think they've announced the roster. Oh, they do have the roster? Let's see. Let's see if they have the rosters yet. I don't think they've announced them yet. Mm-hmm. I know like Kaylor Yamamoto is a player I watched in the under-18s. He'll be there. No, they haven't announced it yet, so we have to see who's going to be going. But this is the 5th year, and it's hard for me to believe that this is the 5th year that I've been doing this. And I love it because, again, I've seen guys like Eichel and McAvoy and just so many, even guys like Roslovic, guys who just you're not sure what they are when they're there, and then they start taking on bigger roles when they leave. So it's a fun game, and it's fun not to have to drive to Buffalo. Let's be real about it.
Well, don't worry, because I'm sure next year it'll probably be back in Buffalo.
I know.
But, I've been – well, there have been 4 so far. This will be the 5th, and I've been to 2 of them, and It's given me a particular insight at some of these players who have ended up being first and second round picks in NHL drafts and getting a first look at Logan Brown and McAvoy.
Yeah, even Tyler Parsons got really no buzz when he was there, but he was there.
Yeah. Finally, the Hockey News, as they I think traditionally do, put out a list of their top. I think it's usually top 50 or top 100, but this year was top 50. And, a couple names at the top are, Sidney Crosby is listed number 1 because the Penguins won a Stanley Cup. Shock. And Patrick Kane is number 2. But I did find some interesting, and I figure we'll make a little game out of this. I'll give you the names of 2 players.
I haven't looked at the list, so I won't look at it. Go ahead.
Okay, obviously I'm looking at the list, so I can't guess. So I'll give you the names of 2 players, and you have to give me who is ranked higher of these 2 players.
It'll be like The Price is Right, but for hockey.
There you go. So let's go Jamie Benn or Alex Ovechkin.
To me, I would have to rank Alex Ovechkin higher.
Okay. Crosby was 1, Kane was 2. Jamie Benn was 4, and Alex Ovechkin was 11.
That's just nonsense. It is. How Alex Ovechkin is an all-timer. He had a great year last year. Did he have a bad year last year? Did I miss something?
No.
So how could he be ranked 11th? Seriously.
Yeah,
Who did the rankings? Please tell us who did the rankings. Or is it one of those things where they say it was a bunch of people, so nobody signs their name to it?
It might be. I don't have the edition of the Hockey News. I just have the list.
Yeah.
Okay. Brent Burns or Erik Karlsson?
Well, I already know they're going to rank Brent Burns higher, but I would rank Erik Karlsson higher. Go ahead.
They did rank Erik Karlsson higher. They
did. Okay.
He was 8th. Brent Burns was 14th.
Wait, you said so? Karlsson was 8th.
Karlsson was 8th. Yes. Okay. John Tavares or Joe Pavelski?
Now they're just basing it off of last year, correct?
I don't think so because, and I was going to use this one, but I have to say. They listed Carey Price as 3rd, and if they used last year, there's no way Carey Price will be 3rd.
All right, so based on that, I will rank John Tavares higher.
They ranked Pavelski higher, 10th. Tavares was 15th.
So wait, so now Joe Pavelski is ranked higher than Alex Ovechkin. Yes. Even Eck, who is a devout San Jose Sharks fan, would never, ever sign off on that.
Okay, I'm going to finish the show by reading off the top 20.
Because I popped my cork.
No. I'm going to finish off the show by reading off the top 20 and gauging the reaction of your incredulity.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so Crosby, Kane, Price. Jamie Benn was 4th. Jonathan Taves is 5th. Oh, that's fine. Drew Doughty 6th. Anze Kopitar 7th. Erik Karlsson 8th. Connor McDavid 9th.
Stop the nonsense.
Okay,
just stop it.
I think Connor McDavid is a generation.
We know that. Everybody knows he's really good.
1 year. 1 year, and his
So
team.
basically, they're telling me if I just beam down from another planet, I would think that Connor McDavid is better than Alex Ovechkin. Is that what they're trying to tell me?
He's got the potential to be, but he hasn't displayed.
You still have
that.
the potential to be like, on the CBS nightly news. Doesn't mean you're going to get there.
Right? No. Pavelski 10th, Ovechkin 11th, Patrice Bergeron 12, Tyler Seguin 13, Brent Burns 14, John Tavares 15, Victor Hedman 16, Braden Holtby 17, Evgeny Malkin 18.
Okay, so hold it there. So Braden Holtby is the number 2 ranked goalie on their list.
Yes.
It's crazy. If you think about it, even as much as I like Braden Holtby, no way. No way. Keep going.
Evgeny Malkin 18, Johnny Gaudreau 19.
So Malkin is just this much better than Gaudreau. Is that what they're trying to tell me?
Yes, that's what they're saying. And Vladimir Tarasenko 20. I'll go 5 more.
I mean, how is that guy 20? He's clearly one of the best players in hockey, and they have him at 20. Okay, go 25. I want to go a few more. Go.
Okay, 21 is Ryan Getzlaf, who had 1 goal and a half a year, but then had a good second half. 22 is Steven Stamkos.
22.
I mean, honestly, I think Steven Stamkos is at least a top dozen player.
He is.
Yeah. 23, Logan Couture.
Okay, that's fine.
24, Dr. Hook, Chris Letang.
Okay.
And 25, Ben Bishop.
So Ben Bishop is ahead of Jonathan Quick.
Yes.
He's ahead of like Lundqvist and Rask
And Rene and Crawford.
Just rip this thing up, man. It's just trash.
Yes, Quick was 26. So
Come on. Just rip it up. Just rip it up now. It's good kindling, eh?
On that note, we will be back tomorrow. Eklund will be back. We'll have Jillian Fisher and Russ and I, and we'll talk about I'm not sure what we'll talk about, but we'll talk about something.
Who knows? Is it Shark Week yet?
Is Sharknado on? I don't know. Is it?
No, Sharknado was already on, but it should be Shark Week this week, I think.
I'm waiting for that the James Lipton show that goes over the career of Tara Reid.
I do want to answer one thing here.
Okay.
Cousin Eddie says I should change to the flat-brimmed hat. I don't enjoy the flat-brimmed hat, and I'll tell you why. Most of the time I wear a hat when I'm playing sports, too. The flat-brimmed hat does nothing to get the sun out of your eyes.
Right.
And half the reason I wear a hat is because, A, I don't have a lot of hair, so I don't want to get the sunburn, and it keeps the sun out of my eyes. Thank you for that suggestion, Cousin Eddie, but it is not going to be taken.
And Cousin Eddie, I am not going to be one of these guys who has the flat-billed hat and then wears it slightly askew,
Right.
like I think CC Sabathia does that, or
He does.
or a few other people.
Johnny Cueto, I think Cueto does it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just I mean, here's where I'm an old man. I can't do that. I'm sorry. It's got to be curved. It's got to be clean. It's got to be nice. No, sorry. Anyway. For Anthony Mangione, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.